How do you get yourself into a creative state of mind so you can be creative? Hi, how are you? So I've been thinking about this lately because I write silly thoughts, I write songs, I write rom-com novels, and I have to get into a creative state of mind in order to do what I do. And you have to get into a creative state of mind in order to do whatever you have to do, whether you're doing business or whether you're doing art or just daily life. You got to get yourself into a mindset. How do you do that? And what happens when you are in that mindset, like psychologically, brain chemical wise, when you're in a creative state, when you're making decisions, when you're piecing two things together and deciding, oh, that's what I should do, when you have revelations and realize, what is going on? You know, I typed this into Google. I says, okay, what's happening in the brain when you're in a state of creativity? And it gave me a whole bunch of confusing stuff like gamma networks and dopamine, and I didn't understand any of this, and I realized I'm going to have to spend a week just trying to take notes on this and research. But I didn't have time for that, so I basically want to tell you, what I do to get into a creative state of mind, and I would love to hear your thoughts about what you do. I go over this with my therapist over and over again. Are you doing the basic things? Are you getting plenty of sleep? Are you getting good meals and healthy eating? And are you doing exercise? And those basic three things, whenever I go to my therapist and I say, I'm feeling run down, she just, okay, are you getting sleep? Are you eating? And are you getting exercise? And we go back to the basics, and usually, if I'm feeling down or out of sorts, I'm usually lacking one or all of those things. And so that's the first thing to get into a creative state, because sleep, let's start with sleep. Well, I don't know if I'll go one by one, but let's just talk about sleep. So when I wrote my silly thought binder, which I've talked about in another YouTube video, there are 7,000 silly thoughts in this binder, and most of them were written early in the morning or at 2 a.m. Because my sleep pattern was to sleep 4 hours, wake up for about 2 hours, and then go back to sleep for another 3 or 4 hours. And I got into that pattern and I couldn't get out of it. And the only thing that really got me out of that and to get into 7 hours or 8 hours straight sleep is exercise, is to tire myself out, basically. And also not eat right before I go to sleep. So those two things combined with sleep, those two things helped me get to sleep. But I would wake up at 2 a.m. or I would wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. and I would feel creative. And there's something about going to sleep and waking up refreshed, because something's going on in the unconscious. And when you wake up, you're not completely in reality yet. You're still in playland, where anything is possible. And you can think about things that you hadn't thought about before, because there are less rules in dreamland, right? And so you're less constrained. If you're trying to be creative at work at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, it's not going to be as good because you're in work mode and you have constraints. But when you wake up at 2 a.m. and no one's pressuring you to go do things, you got to get to work, you have time to play a little bit. The world's asleep, or at least half the world. And it's like, okay, I'm awake. And while everyone's asleep, I can do this secret thing. I can write these secret, silly thoughts that otherwise people would laugh at or would say doesn't work. But at 2 a.m., I could write all these silly thoughts. And one of the things that I would do is to get inspired, because I couldn't just stare at the wall. Sometimes I could stare at the wall and think of a silly thought. Usually I would associate something, and then I would think, oh, that's an interesting take on that. So I would go to Google and I would look up job occupations, bartender, voice actor, photographer, athlete, or I would look up topics that you could write about. I would just look at lists of topics and I would think of, okay, mountains. What's an interesting thing about a mountain? What's a silly thought you could make about a mountain? And I thought, well, okay, just off the top of my head, a mountain is so much higher up than everyone. Mountains really want to be looked at. there are flat land, there's valleys that are kind of introverted, don't look at me. Where other parts of land are like, look at me, I am majestic, I am awesome. So I feel like when I look at a mountain, I'm looking at a giant ego. That's the land's ego. So I thought, okay, that's a topic, and I can just, do a silly thought about that. The other thing is, if you look at two different topics and put them together, where they don't usually associate with things, and this is one of the things that Google was saying, is that when a scientist is coming up with a new revelatory realization, when a comedian is putting together a joke, it's usually you're taking two different things that are normally not associated with each other and putting them together, and that connection, that strange, odd connection, is either funny or can be, like for a scientist, oh, that's a brand new way of looking at it, and that totally makes sense. When I went to photography school in San Francisco, one of the things that I learned was when you create a photo, to create, I think it was concept, photo concept class, we learned this. You take two different things to create a third idea. So, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything, but like tomorrow I'm going to post a silly thought about riding dinosaurs, like you do horses. And I thought, okay, if we bring dinosaurs back, okay, there's the topic. Okay, dinosaurs. What funny thing can I say about dinosaurs? Okay, what if we bring dinosaurs back? What would we do? Could we ride them like horses? And if you did, you'd have to have a saddle. So if you take the two things of a dinosaur and a saddle and you put them together, riding dinosaurs, okay? So there's two different things that normally wouldn't go together, but you put them together, and it's humorous and it's revelatory at the same time. Is it? So, but you could ride a dinosaur, and if you take that, then you take it to the next step, which is if you create saddles to ride on dinosaurs, there would have to be saddle makers for dinosaurs. So dinosaur saddle makers, which would create a whole new job occupation of dinosaur saddle makers. So bringing back dinosaurs could actually help the job industry and increase employment, because then you're opening all these opportunities for saddle makers for dinosaurs. So that's how the silly thought kind of works, is you take one word and you take another thing and you associate them together, and how can you put those two things together? So like, I don't know, a bartender and a dog walker. Or a bartender and UFOs. Okay, maybe do aliens have bartenders? Are there alien bartenders? Okay, then you just okay, if there were alien bartenders, what are the hours? Do they work hours? And what if that alien had, 8 tentacles like a bartender? What if octopuses were bartenders? Okay, now the mind just keeps going, and it just keeps associating. And when it's 2 a.m., you can just roll with it. And so sleep, I think, and associating things is such the vast amount of ways I come up with silly thoughts. And I'm curious, for you, like if you're a musician and you play music, how do you get into it? Because, like Saturday Night Live says, we go on not because we're ready, we go on because of 11:30. If you're a musician and or a comedian and you've got to go on stage at 8 o'clock, but you don't always feel like going on stage at 8 o'clock, or you're an actor and you got to be in a happy musical, but you just had a horrible breakup, right? And you're feeling low, but you got to go on stage and put on a smiling face. What was my point? My point is you got to get into a creative state of mind, whether you're, feeling like it or not. So when I'm writing my novels, I get a good night's sleep. I'm getting exercise. I get up, I eat breakfast, and then I go and I sit down in front of that computer, and I turn on some music. And it's usually chill out lounge music without any lyrics, so it doesn't, the vocals don't interfere with whatever's going on in my mind. And I'm usually not starting from scratch. I'm usually starting from rough notes that I wrote at 2 a.m. or random ideas that I wrote down throughout the day. And I take those thoughts and I put them together and I think, okay, now I'm going to create that scene. And sometimes I just stare at the laptop And then I get into, okay, how do I want to enter this scene? Or I've outlined the story, and okay, how do I want to get from here to here to here? Because basically story writing, sorry, my thoughts are so random. Basically story writing is getting from here to here and all the little steps along the way. So basically when you're writing a chapter in a book, all you're doing is getting, how am I going to get from here to here? And then what's the transition twist in between those things in the middle of the scene or middle of the chapter that happens? And so that's all you're doing is you're going from here to here to here. You're writing from here to here to here. And then between those things, you play and make it fun. And so with a joke or whatever you're doing during your day, you're basically just taking these little steps of creativity or creativity between solid points. I'm not sure what exactly I'm trying to say. And if you get anything out of this, that's fantastic. Because I don't know how to logically say, because I think Jerry Seinfeld was like, how do you write a joke? Someone was like asking him. And it's almost impossible. You can do the math where x plus y equals a bushel of potatoes, and you get the joke that way mathematically going through the steps. But basically this stuff just comes to you out of the blue. And it's so difficult to be a creative artist and have a full-time day job at the same time, because those are two things that are completely opposite. Because your best thought, the horrible thing about having a great thought at 2 a.m. is that you're up for 2 hours and then you go back to sleep, and by the time you're going back to sleep, it's 5 a.m. and you got to get up in 2 hours. And so you go to bed, so you go to work, and you're just tired throughout the day, and you get home and you're tired, and then your sleep cycle gets off. And so it's almost impossible to be a creative person and work a day job at the same time. People do it, you got to do it. But it's so difficult. And then when you don't have a day job or you're working part-time, then you can get lackadaisical, and it's almost good to have those constraints. So I don't know, what I'm saying is that creativity is just hard. And easy at the same time, because sometimes those 2 a.m. sessions, it's like, why is this difficult? This is so easy. It's just pouring out of me. And I have this vision, those moments of brilliance. And it's pompous to say that, but they are moments of brilliance, because I'm not brilliant all the time, but every once in a while I'll have these flashes, and I don't claim the brilliance myself. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where creativity and inspiration comes from. I just know how to get into the mindset to induce it to happening. So those doors, I picture these huge doors in my mind. And if you have a creative idea, those doors just open just a little bit, and a sliver of brilliant light comes shining out and gives you an idea. And you're off and running. If those doors were to open all the way, I would just be, mesmerized and not be able to do anything. I'd be overwhelming. But because those doors just open just a little bit and let some of that brilliant light from wherever it is come through, and you have an insight. And Einstein realized M equals MC squared 3418 hike. Whatever he did, and it just comes to you. Those doors open just a little bit for a little bit of time, and then it's gone. It's fleeting. It doesn't last long. It lasts for a few hours, and then you can turn it off. Because if I had creativity all the time, I would get nothing done. It would be overwhelming. So luckily, it comes just in flashes, and it lasts for a few hours, and then it's like, what happened? I was in a daze. I don't remember what happened. What happened? And then I looked down at what I wrote on the page. I was like, okay. And then you go back and you look at it the next day, and half of it's gibberish. And you got to completely rewrite it. So it's a combination of creativity and craft. But that creativity is what creates it. And that inspiration. And thank goodness it comes, because without that, then you don't have craft. You don't have anything to work on. You can rewrite something you wrote, but you can't write it until you have a creative moment, and you can't have a creative moment until you get into a creative mindset. And Did that help you at all? There's other things I could go into. I'm going to do this. This is like part 1, and I'll do a part 2. I think of memories. I think of things that I could have done. I think of, I think about throughout my day. If I just lay there and think about what goes on throughout my day, where did I go? Do I have thoughts about that? So I'm thinking about external things when I'm thinking of topics, and I'm thinking of internal things when I think about my own memories and what I did that day. I'm thinking about, last thing I'll leave you with is, somebody said something where you should do a podcast, or you should do a comedy special, like it should be like when you were laughing with your friends in the high school cafeteria at lunch or study hall. And I remember laughing in study hall in the cafeteria with my friends. Everybody was funny. Everybody was making jokes, and it was free and playful and no censoring. And it should be like that when you're in creative. It's just total play. And then lunch ends, and then you've got to go back to class. But creativity is so hard to explain, and that's whatever I've said during this video, that's about as close as I can get to. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I'll get to some other parts where I'm going to do some research on what actually happens, because it was talking about this rush of dopamine that you get that excites you, and that makes you want to write down your idea. And I'm in favor of you writing down your ideas when you have them throughout the day. So, because otherwise, because I wrote down ideas when I had them, I have a binder of silly ideas where I can turn those into videos on Instagram. And if I hadn't written down my ideas, I would have nothing. So I really encourage you to write down whatever ideas you have during the day, because then you'll have something to talk about with your friends, to think about later, to turn into books and jokes and whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to leave you with that. So I would love to hear your thoughts about creativity, and if you got anything out of this video, I'm so happy. So I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll talk about other stuff, next week. All right, see ya. Bye. I got into a creative state, and I just kept rambling. And thank goodness this happens. Because if I didn't know what I was going to do, I don't know what I'm going to talk about when I start these things. I just keep rambling. Improv. Creativity is basically improv. Anyway, have a great week.